Pregame Central, presented by USVI. I'm your host, Caroline Hendershot, joined by Eric Allen and Quincy Williams, and we are back in the Audi Performance Studio. Week 2 on the clock for the Jets. They are in Tennessee, taking on the Titans. Aaron Rodgers in the building. Both teams looking to get into that win column. Gentlemen, how are we feeling for week 2?
Feeling really good. You're bringing the energy. Listen, one of these two teams is going to be singing the blues later this afternoon in the Music City because either the Jets or the Titans are going to go 0-2. Quincy, this is the beginning of a big week for the Jets because not only do they play the Titans Sunday, they're coming back Thursday night for your home opener against the New England Patriots. So what this all means for the Jets, great opportunity.
Absolutely. And you don't want to think too far behind or ahead, but you've got to kind of remember about what happened last week. You had a game that you felt like you should have played a lot better in, and the Tennessee feels the same way. So we're going to see two teams really ready to show themselves, show what they can do. Offensively for Tennessee, obviously they had those turnovers in the second half that really messed them up. The Jets had turnovers as well, and they couldn't find a way to start good offense.
Yeah, okay, so we have Aaron Rodgers starting his second game today, and let me just say this. He's never started a season 0-2 in his career. So what do you think we are going to see from him today?
First off, that is an amazing stat, considering that Aaron Rodgers, this is his 17th year as a starter in the National Football League, 20th year overall. And to go further on your point there, Caroline, 5-0 after a Week 1 loss, 14 touchdowns and 1 interception. Last week against the San Francisco 49ers, I thought Rodgers took some very important steps. He completed 13 of 21 passes. The bottom line for the Jets offense, they did some good things. But unfortunately, a couple of those early mistakes really set them back, where you had a drop, then a fumble, and then you had this such an impressive third drive, and that's what you want to see from the Jets here this afternoon against the Tennessee Titans. We're watching Breece Hall warm up there in Tennessee. Hall last week, Quincy, I thought he was okay, but you could get a sense that him and that new offensive line were getting a feel for each other.
Yeah, absolutely. All across the board, honestly. Like, it wasn't just Breece Hall, it was everybody. We saw Aaron Rodgers kind of feel himself in the middle of the game. He kind of, twist his fingers a little bit, smiled to the camera. It was like perfect timing with the production, honestly. But, yeah, I think for him it's going to be, okay, I got to make up some of those bad throws I had. That fourth down throw was one of those ones that I know he wanted to do better at. And then as far as Breece Hall, it was a team effort, honestly. The receivers on the edge got to do a better job of staying on their blocks. That was one thing that kind of hurt the offense. And when you can't sustain drives, it's hard. I think they had maybe one drive over 4 minutes. That's hard to win a game like that because San Francisco was going out there and they just kept sustaining drives. They had great individual efforts, and that helped them in the game.
Yeah, everybody talks about rhythm all the time, and the Jets only had 49 offensive plays. And you go back to that first half, they had that great drive where they're up 7-3, and then after that there were 2 3-and-outs as well. So it was on both sides. You get a sense that they just couldn't get a rhythm established on Monday night.
Do you feel like it was maybe uncharacteristic, not just of Aaron Rodgers, but of the Jets offense as a whole?
Yeah. There's going to be a feeling out process, I think, for the Jets offense because you do have these new parts. You have the new parts up front. You got Rodgers playing for the first time, basically, with the Jets. And then you have some new guys on the outside. We saw that chemistry going with Garrett Wilson, who had the 6 catches. You saw the chemistry with Allen Lazard, who had the 6 catches. And then also Breece Hall had 5 receptions. But Rodgers only completed passes to 3 different players. You want to see more guys get involved here this week.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's tough. They didn't play any preseason games. Aaron Rodgers hasn't played in over a year. So he had mentioned, there was a time where he said Garrett, he just didn't remember how fast he is. Like, some of those throws are behind him because Garrett Wilson runs his plays full speed. So I think as they start to get a little bit more rhythm and understanding each other, it's kind of a new offense, let's be honest, right? So they're out there kind of really learning each other. In that first game, unfortunately, they had one of the Super Bowl players in the, and that's your test. You didn't get any preseason games, so that was your opportunity to say, okay, this is what we need to learn from. So what a great test it was.
All right, let's turn to the other quarterback that we're going to be seeing today, Will Levis. He's in his second year with the Titans. He only started 9 games last year after Tannehill got injured, and he came in as the quarterback. But the Titans last week were leading 17-0 going into halftime, and then things took a turn against the Bears. There was obviously 2 interceptions, a fumble lost, all in the fourth quarter. How do we think Will Levis is going to respond today?
Listen, Levis is a big guy. He can make every throw on the field, and he also can tuck it at times. But he's prone to make mistakes when he's put under pressure. You saw him trying to do too much against the Chicago Bears in a 17-17 game. He's in the grasp of a defender, and he makes a crazy throw up the sideline that's intercepted, and they go on to lose that football game. But this team is not void of weapons when you're talking about Calvin Ridley, his number one receiver. You got DeAndre Hopkins, who was full at practice this week, and Tyler Boyd as well. But make no mistake about it. The Tennessee Titans are going to come out and try to run the football against this Jets defense.
I mean, they have Bill Callahan, right? He came and worked for his son. That guy is an offensive guru. He's going to make sure these guys know what to do in the run game. And after seeing that film in the 49ers game, he's going to say, look, I know we can do this. I've done it before. I'm going to make sure I can will my guys to do that for us. So, it's going to be a tough challenge for this Jets defense. They have to understand that they're going to get ran on. And then the receivers, right? Those guys, I talked about it before. Like, those guys, I love who they picked up because it's a complete receiver room. They just have to get guys healthy. And it's great for Will Levis, who needs some talent. He needs some players to throw to. So it's going to be a great challenge for this Jets defense.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I love Quinnen Williams' attitude this week when he said, we have to earn the right to rush the passer. The Jets got to set the edge this week after what the 49ers were able to do. What was it? 147 yards on the ground from Mason, but they had 180 overall, I think.
And
Go ahead.
I want to add one more thing that, with Will Levis, I think the Jets defense will do a great job of creating pressure in this game. They have a younger offensive line. And so, you think about what was hard for him last week in that interception, the fumble, it was pressure. Yeah. And I know the Jets want to bring pressure. We're going to talk about it later, but this is a great game to do that.
Well, something that you guys both said is that the Titans are going to look to run the ball. The copycat league, if it works the previous week, you're going to do it the following week. Someone they're going to have to look out for, Tony Pollard. They actually saw Tony Pollard last year when they played him in Dallas when he was with the Cowboys, and Tajay Spears. What are some of those things that they're going to have to look for with defending those two?
Well, Pollard, he's a smaller guy, but he is a downhill runner. He averaged more than 5 yards per carry against the Chicago Bears. They didn't really get Spears involved against the Bears. I think you're going to see those guys both get some run early in this ball game, because when you look at Tennessee splits last week, it was the Tony Pollard show, and he can do everything. But they're going to try to get Spears involved because he's a different kind of back.
Yeah, and I mean, when you talk about that, the week one is so hard to really understand what a team looks like, right? You can, especially when you have a team that has a whole new coach. So we're going to see a lot today that they haven't seen at all. They don't know what to expect. I think there's going to be some similarities in last week because you have a coach that can run the ball. But ultimately, there's going to be a lot being thrown out at you. We also got to remind ourselves that DeAndre Hopkins barely played.
Yep.
Right.
So that's two great receivers that they have. Now, obviously, San Francisco has some talent. But, three receivers that can go out there, and I'm not talking about receivers, right, because San Francisco has guys that can play all different type of positions. So it's going to be a little bit of a different game for them. All the corners have to step up, and I know we have some guys that are questionable today, but it's going to be a challenge, and we have to make sure that they're not only playing the pass game, but also the run game.
Yeah, the defense is definitely going to be in focus. And our other teammate who is in Tennessee for us, Ethan Greenberg, got to catch up with Quincy Williams before warm-ups and got to talk about what the defense is focusing on today.
Thanks, Caroline. Here with Quincy Williams. Quincy, what gives you the confidence this defense is in a position to rebound against the Titans?
This past week after the loss, we just revisited ourselves and just getting back to what we know how to do and playing our brand of football. We didn't put that on tape on Monday, so today just putting that on tape. And then there's a short week also, so just making sure our body's right to perform today. Let's be honest, no one really cares about it. If you had a short day or a long day, it's about the performance on Sunday. So that's our biggest mindset, and then so keeping the standard.
You just mentioned the standard. A lot of your teammates talked about that. What is the standard of this defense?
The standard defense, run, communicate, and hit. That's the most important thing. So really just keeping it there, sitting in the run game, setting the edges, and then having the pursuit on the back end. And then as far as pass, just being on the communication. If everybody on the same page, if we all right, we all right. If we all wrong, we all wrong. Then but we all playing as one and running.
And then lastly, as a team, how would you describe the mentality on a short week and just like the mood of the team heading into week two?
The biggest thing is getting it done. That's the mindset. No matter how you feel and things like that. Our number one goal is going 1-0 this week. So whatever you got to do during the week, whether there's a little bit more treatment, whether there's a little bit more film study, just getting ready for on Sunday.
Awesome, Quincy. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
All right, huge update from Quincy on what the defense is going to be focusing on. We got Aaron Rodgers taking the field, though, starting those warm-ups. I do want to talk about the Jets' defense, specifically the run defense that has been in focus quite a bit. Allowed 147 yards from Jordan Mason last week against the 49ers. So what challenge are they going to be faced with today?
They're going to be faced with the challenge of a team that's going to be intent on establishing the ground game with both Pollard and Spears. We talked about Bill Callahan, one of the best offensive line coaches in the history of the National Football League. The Titans are going to try to establish their game at the line of scrimmage. They are going to get right after the Jets. Conversely, what the Jets have to do, everybody to a man in the locker room this week talked about setting the edge. The big thing early in the season for the Jets is they're making this transition, right? John Franklin Myers was obviously traded to the Denver Broncos. Bryce Huff goes over to the Philadelphia Eagles in free agency, and Hassan Reddick is holding out right now. So you're depending on Michael Clemens opposite Jermaine Johnson. Jermaine Johnson, he talked about in the locker room this week, hey, I want to point the finger at myself. You can either point the finger or point the thumb. He's pointing the thumb and saying that I got to be better. And I thought the Jets at all three levels were a little bit hesitant defensively, and that's something we haven't seen from them in the past.
Yeah, you could say they kind of started slow. I think everybody did in that game. Ultimately, though, I think one thing they really want to work on is that guys were kind of playing a little bit of hero ball. I think one of the coaches said that as well. Like, guys wanted to make individual efforts and go out there and make plays, but sometimes you got to play as a team. And I like what Quincy said. He said, if one's right, we're all right. If one's wrong, we're all wrong. That's a great mentality to go into with this week because now you're playing as a team. You don't have guys going out there as individuals and doing things, stepping out of gaps, not setting the edge like you said. So I think it'll be a more complete team.
Yeah, Robert Saleh mentioned that earlier this week. He said he wasn't necessarily disappointed with the defensive effort. He was more so surprised by it. He said, they were doing too much, trying to focus on maybe too many different aspects. Obviously, the run game's in focus. And, you just brought up setting the edge being in focus. What's this defensive back group going to have to focus on? I mean, we talked about those wide receivers, DeAndre Hopkins, Tyler Boyd, Calvin Ridley. Like, that is a big challenge that they're going to be faced with.
Well, this is a young kid in Levis, the counterpart of Aaron Rodgers, who he's not afraid to take chances down the field. And he's got some guys who you're going to have to account for. So what the Titans are going to try to do is establish that run game and bring everybody into the box and then go up top, and we'll have to see what happens. I'm interested to see how the Jets deploy Sauce Gardner today because last week we saw him at times with Ayuk. Does he travel with Ridley today? And a big injury that we have to pay attention to right now is DJ Reed because he was limited to practice Wednesday and Thursday. He did not practice on Friday.
Correct.
He's listed as questionable. Who's on the outside opposite Sauce Gardner if DJ Reed doesn't play?
Yeah, that's a great question, right? Because when we talk about the challenge for the DBs, it's who's going to be out there. If he is not playing, now you're saying, okay, is it Stiggers? Is it JBC, right? Those guys have to step up. And what a great time to step up against these guys because they have some players out there. And we also have to be mindful that Tajay Spears can also catch the ball at the backfield as well. So,
yes.
Again, we didn't see what he could do last week, but I think this week they're going to give him that challenge. They're going to want to test whoever is in for DJ Reed. So look at the pass game a little bit. Will Levis is going to want to make up for last week. He's going to want to throw it around a little bit, and what a challenge for him as well.
I thought it was interesting that Quinnen Williams actually threw out Josh Allen as far as like a comp for Will Levis. The big dude who will tuck it sometimes and throw the ball down the field. But listen, he's making his 11th start in the National Football League. We were looking at Rodgers before. This is his 20th season, 17th season as a starter. Yeah. Levis is making his 11th start in the league. He's coming off a game where he had 2 interceptions, and ball security has been an issue at times. Also, this is a guy here early in his career, less than 60% completing the football.
Right. I know you guys did mention DJ Reed, questionable, did not practice on Friday. We did have some video of him warming up, so that will probably come down to a game time decision. But, I will remind everyone, last year when both DJ Reed and Sauce Gardner were out against the Eagles, that defensive back room really stepped up and had quite a game. So I'm feeling pretty confident in the depth within that room. But
that's a great point about the Eagles game because a lot of those dudes who are balling out, they're not even here right now.
Right. But I think that's going to be a nice, comforting thing to think about while he's questionable. Now let's go to to the Jets offense. Alan Lazard last week led the group, 89 yards, 2 touchdowns. Do we expect a similar performance out of him this week?
That's an interesting question.
Yeah, it is. It is. I think there's a chance. I think there's a chance, right? Because he showed that he can do it in a game time. I think there was some question marks last year, like is he going to step up and make the plays he needed to make? I think last week he chose to show that to the team. But then Mike Williams is supposed to get more reps as well, right? So how does he show up, right? How can we see what he's going to do? Because that'll be the question mark. That's the dark horse. Because if he shows up and is Mike Williams from last year and years before, it's going to be a great game for him.
Alan Lazard should definitely have more confidence coming off a tough season. He's reunited with Rodgers and then comes out of the gate with 6 catches, 89 yards, and the 2 scores like you were talking about. Mike Williams, he only had 9 snaps. But again, the Jets only had 49 offensive snaps. So does he get in the range of more of a 15 to 17 snap per game snaps out here against the Titans? And also Malachi Corley only got 1 snap last week. So I wonder if they'll try to get him in the mix, maybe a couple gadget plays.
I mean, I think the biggest thing is they have to sustain drives. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, in the first half, it was all 3 and outs. 3 and outs and a fumble. Then the second half, it was more 3 and outs, an on down, so they lost a 4th down. And then, an interception. Yep. So if they can't sustain drives, it doesn't really matter, right? And that's the question mark. We have to see them sustain these drives. Then we can really see these playmakers make some plays.
There's Williams stretching right now. He's got the trademark hat on.
Yeah, I don't know how he does it in hot weather with that winter hat on. So does it really just come down to sustaining drives, Quincy, to get more of those playmakers involved?
Yeah, definitely. I think they're not happy with what they put out there, and it can't be because ultimately they need to be able to have more than 3 downs because then you're keeping the defense out there. And when you have a team like San Francisco that knows how to run the ball, they can run that clock, and it makes it hard for the defense. So they can't follow that up last week with another performance like that. Offense has to show up. That's the biggest question mark that we've had the past couple of years. And so with Aaron Rodgers out there, we expect more, and I think they expect some of that from themselves.
I don't know how much Tennessee's defense was really tested against Chicago Bears. Caleb Williams is making his first start in the National Football League last week. If you look at the stats over one game, Tennessee leads the NFL in total defense. And I really like their defensive interior when you're talking about Jeffrey Simmons, one of the finer defensive tackles in this league. Also, you got Sweat, the big rookie from Texas, who he made a statement, I thought, in his first game. Arden Key can bring some pressure off the edge. And then you also have Harold Landry, an underrated pass rusher himself. So they do have good parts there in Tennessee. L'Jarius Sneed, when we talk about the receiver position, I'm wondering if he's going to be following Garrett Wilson. And you said before we came on the air, he didn't look like he was in midseason form last week against the Bears.
Not at all. And it's a new system for him, right? He's got to really learn how he fits in there. So he was with he was with the Chiefs for so long. That's what he knows. That's his bread and butter. So going into this team, it's going to be interesting to see how he does this second week. That first week was not his best effort. So I think this week we're going to see a more aggressive L'Jarius Sneed, and that's kind of how he plays. He's a sticky guy. He plays aggressive. He's not afraid to put his head in the game. He plays inside and out when needed. So it's going to be an interesting matchup with him and Garrett Wilson.
And every game's got so many storylines. How about the former Jet defensive back Jamal Adams going to be in the lineup against his former team today?
Yep.
Quincy and I were talking about this as well. How are you going to use Jamal? Probably not in a traditional safety position. Maybe is he a big nickel? Is he a rush linebacker today?
Right.
Yeah, there's a plethora of storylines heading into almost every game, it feels like. But specifically, Ethan Greenberg gave us a little bit of information when we checked in with him earlier before the game on maybe an advantage for the Jets down in Tennessee.
So these seats are blue here in the stadium, but I expect a lot of green to be filling them. You talk about what you've seen on social media lately. The reports are true. There is a large contingency of Jets fans in Nashville. We went out to dinner last night and had to walk the main strip of Broadway to get there. The amount of Jets jerseys, the amount of Jets shirts, even Jets chants, we saw it all. And also, I spoke to Judy Batista of NFL Network this morning. I ran into her in the press box, and I asked her, like, hey, did your flight have a lot of Jets fans too? She said it was flooded. The person in the seat next to her decked out in green and white. Also, you take a look at the reports or what a couple beat reporters have posted on Twitter. Jets chants in Nashville when the plane landed. Jets chants in Newark on the way to Nashville. So I expect there to be a big contingency of Jets fans today here.
All right. right, we got all those Jets fans down in Tennessee, but we're also going to be having them at MetLife because you have to be at MetLife for the 2024 home opener presented by Verizon on Thursday, September 19th. The Jets are going to take on their division rivals, the New England Patriots. So a limited number of tickets remain at nyjets.com/tickets. Lock in yours today. Okay, guys, it is time for our X Factors for today's matchup. I know everyone's excited to kind of state their case. I am going to go with Quincy. You are up first. Let's hear it.
So we talk about Will Levis, a young quarterback back there, and what was the hardest thing for him last week was the pressure. So that's where I'm going. I'm going defensive pressure. I think these guys have a chip on their shoulder. They really want to show the world that they are who they say they are. And so in order to do that, Quinnen Williams and the rest of his crew, they got to get to the quarterback. They got to stay in their lanes as well. They got to make sure that they're making it tough for that offensive backfield, because otherwise you're making it even harder on the back end, right? Those corners got to cover for longer, the safeties, the linebackers. Let's get out there and make some plays so that we don't have to blitz, because that is the pride of this defense. We don't blitz because we don't have to.
Let's stay along the line of scrimmage. I'm going to flip it, though. I'm going to talk about John Simpson, the Jets' new left guard. Aaron Rodgers got rid of the ball quickly last week, so the pass protection was fine, and the Jets actually thought that they were very close to breaking a couple long runs had it not been for superhero Fred Warner at the linebacker position. Simpson is a nasty guy. He is a mauler. He can be a tone setter. And where the Titans are awfully good defensively, it starts in the middle with Simmons and then the rookie Sweat. I think the Jets have to play well on the interior offensive line. I'll be watching John Simpson.
All right, we obviously had to include Ethan. Ethan's X factor for today is what?
I'm going with Titans wide receiver DeAndre Hopkins for my X factor. He only took 17 snaps in week 1, but head coach Brian Callahan said that Hopkins is expected to have an increased role and be close to a full go today against the Jets. Hopkins missed the entirety of training camp with a knee sprain. And think about this. He's a guy who last season over 1,000 yards and 7 touchdowns for the Tennessee Titans. And the news for the Jets in terms of that matchup, whoever starts opposite Sauce Gardner could see Hopkins, could see Tyler Boyd. And, of course, DJ Reed listed as questionable for today's matchup. So that's the matchup I'm keeping an eye on.
All right, some good insight from Ethan. I am going to go for my X factor with time of possession for the Jets. Last week against the 49ers, they only had the ball for 21 minutes and 20 seconds. They could only run 49 plays. I feel like we've talked about this a lot, but the offense cannot get anything going when they're that limited in time and they're that limited in the number of plays that are called. So I think if we can up that amount of time today for the Jets and they can really maintain possession, like Quincy was saying earlier, sustaining those drives. That's where it's going to come in, and that's going to be their bread and butter, where they really hit their stride.
I love it. Right on cue, right there. Tyler Conklin. Because if you're able to sustain drives, you're going to have more plays, and guys like Conklin are going to be able to get involved with this Jets offense today.
Right. I mean, we talk about the plethora of weapons that Aaron Rodgers has, but if you can't sustain your drives, then you can never see them.
Right, exactly. All right, so tomorrow's headlines predictions. Quincy, I'm going to start with you again.
Okay.
What's the headline that we're going to see in the paper tomorrow?
So I think we'll talk about Will Levis turning the ball over a few times. And for me, I really want to see Sauce get a pick.
Ooh,
so
love
the
it.
saucy Jets defense capitalizes on Tennessee's turnovers. That is my headline. I think they're going to make something happen.
That would go a long way to victory here on Sunday as the Jets look for win number 1 against the Tennessee Titans. I'm going to go on the defensive side of the ball. The Jets' edge returns in Nashville. That's the thing that we continued to hear throughout the week at One Jets Drive, that they have to do a better job at setting the edge. The Titans are going to come out and try to pound them like the San Francisco 49ers did on Monday night. It's a short week. Jeff Ulbrich, the Jets defensive coordinator, said a response is needed. A response to what happened, and our standard will be revealed. I'm expecting the Jets to come back here with a good performance against the Titans.
All right, my headline is going to be Jets 1-1, defense redeemed. I know that everyone on the defensive side of the ball was really upset with how they performed, what the product was that they put out on the field, from the corners to the linebackers to the D-line. I think across the board, that was not the standard. And Ulbrich said it best. Defensive coordinator Jeff Ulbrich said it best. He said, I just want to see them play to their standard, because that's all it is. We're not going to do too much. We're not going to go crazy. All it is just going back to what we know, those basics that we're good at. So I'm excited to see the defense really have their type of style of game, because I think it's there. Maybe it was just doing a little bit too much last week against the 49ers. All right, introducing Jets Uncorked, a premium Cabernet wine and the ultimate collector's item for every fan. Elevate your tailgate with the perfect addition at nyjets.com/wine. Bleed green, drink red. All right, before we get to the inactives today, I want to show you guys Big Q warming up.
There you go.
Someone that he's going to be lining up next to, Javon Kinlaw, also on that interior D-line. What do we want to see from that interior today?
I would hope they'll be able to push the pocket because no quarterback, especially a young guy like Will Levis, wants that pressure up the middle. And if Quinnen Williams has the opportunity to get after Levis, that can lead to what Quincy's talking about, those takeaways in the secondary. And Levis is a guy who will make mistakes if you put the pressure on him. And if it gets tight in games where, hey, there are situations where he feels like he has to make a play, he will try to force it. So the Jets' defensive line, it's up to them to dictate terms.
Yeah, definitely. And I think with Quinnen, it'll be exciting because we got to see a little glimpse of him playing around the field, right? So let's see if they kind of put a little bit more, implement that more, because, again, they didn't get to play their game. It was a lot of on-your-heels ball from the Jets, like just not even defensively, but also offensively. So I think we're going to see a few more special things with Quinnen. They played with Sauce a little bit, kind of moving him around. So I think Quinnen will be great. Kinlaw, right, he's playing against his old team last week,
Yep.
and he didn't play as well as he wanted to. So, again, another guy that will have a chip on his shoulder. So, that defensive line should be hungry.
I'd watch that left side of the Titans line. You're talking about J.C. Latham, a number 7 overall pick in the draft, and then Skoronski as well. If the Titans are going to have success, watch them go to the left. The Jets have to have a counter for that.
Okay, very, very good insight. All right, let's go to inactives today. We've got Max Mitchell, Carter Warren, Izzy Abonaconda, Eric Watts, Leonard Taylor, and DJ Reed. So DJ Reed is the big one that we're going to circle here. Obviously, he is being ruled out for today's game. What are your guys' thoughts on that?
I'm not surprised because he did not practice on Friday, so that's kind of the way it was pointed to in terms of he was a limited participant of practice Wednesday and Thursday, so no surprise that Reed's out of the lineup. Now the question is, who's the starter? My assumption is it's going to be Brandon Echols, the veteran in that group. I thought Jarek Bernard-Converse had a very good training camp. You also have the rookie Quantez Stiggers. Jets are quietly dealing with some injuries in the secondary. Michael Carter continues to battle through that ankle injury. Now you're without DJ Reed. And Reed is a guy who ended up having 9 tackles last week against the 49ers.
Yeah, I think it'll be an interesting matchup. I think for the Jets, they might play a little bit more zone, right? Especially even on third down when, you kind of want to send some pressure there. There's a chance they play a little more zone just to kind of protect those guys. Brandon Echols played last week. Stiggers got a few reps when Sauce got out, and those guys did their best. But at times they weren't exactly in the best position. But if we're being honest, though, out of all the DBs, DJ Reed had the toughest time last week against the 49ers receivers. So I think just kind of watching that film, the young guys might want to go and show themselves because this is an opportunity for them to say, hey, look, you can play me a little more.
I know he was struggling with that knee soreness, so maybe it was even bothering him last week during the 49ers game, and we just didn't know, and that's why it was having a little bit of difficulty. Do you guys have any other final thoughts before we wrap it up here on set?
I think I'm kind of coming full circle where this is just a big opportunity for the Jets because you play the Titans today, and before the season you looked at this matchup and said you should have a good opportunity to win this game. But not only this, this is a huge week because you're coming back for your home opener. It's going to look a lot different being 1-1 versus 0-2 and having the Patriots in your building.
That's a great point. That home opener point is probably the biggest point, right? Next to it being an AFC team. Right, last week you had you were able to kind of calm down and say, hey, you know, we played an NFC team, but now you're playing an AFC team. It means a little bit more. Ultimately, if you want to make it to the playoffs, these are the games you want to win. And so I hope they're up to the test. I think they will. Coach Saleh tends to put them there, so it'll be a great game.
Yeah, should be a big competitive game, but everyone, thanks so much for tuning in. We're going to be right back here in the studio after the game ends for Jets overtime, so make sure you tune in. We will see you then.